The City Planning Commission. First order of business is approval of minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting? Anyone, any addenda to those minutes? Any changes? No? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion we approve.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all right. Having that motion and second, take a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Motion passes. All right. Any addendum to the agenda?
No, sir, not at this time.
Okay, great. Well, let's move right on with our business. First order of business is ANX 26-5, the annexation of 305 Eagle Brook Drive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the site in question is outlined on your map in front of you in red. You can see Edgebrook Drive running horizontally across the top third of the map with Concord, here let me move my cursor, Concord coming up diagonally on the left-hand side. Does everybody know where we are?
Yep.
Great. So what's important is everything in grayed out on this map is currently inside the county. Everything that has a color or over it is inside the city. And those colors just correspond to the city zoning as they are right now. So the property owner is requesting annexation into the city to construct a 15-lot subdivision. There is currently a house on the lot on the property right now, so that's a net gain of only 14 houses. It's adjacent to the city limits right here, so that is applicable to have that annex, or he can request that annex. I'm sorry, hold on just a minute. So we've gotten a lot of calls, or we've gotten some calls from people in the neighboring subdivisions over here. One of those calls or one of those requests is, well, is the city going to move forward and annex our subdivisions? And the answer to that is no. There are no plans at this time to annex any kind of developed or built out subdivision. And if this were annexed, it would not be any more, it would be, there's still an adjacent piece of town property here, so if the city had plans, they could have already done it. But just to be clear, there are no plans to annex those two subdivisions across to Edgebrook Drive. Again, going back to the proposal, it's for a 15-unit subdivision here. That 15-unit subdivision, the parcel is approximately 9.3 acres. That would equate to a density that's less than half the density that's over here. So just to be clear, the density inside the city on the proposal would be less than half of the density of the two subdivisions that are in the county. So let's look at that plan right now. This is the proposed subdivision of that parcel. Some of the important things to point out, there is a 50-foot landscape buffer here along Edgebrook Drive, right here. So that would be a 50-foot landscaped buffer, and then you can see the houses, the lots back here with a green in the middle right here. Aware that there is some flooding concern along the Cox Creek area. This is the stormwater detention area, so all stormwater from this development will flow into that stormwater detention area and not exacerbate the flooding on Cox Creek. As you know, any PDD that comes before you, let me back up. They're coming with a PDD zoning request. So with that request, also is attached to that a PDD document that has the specifications for the development in this area. So it was in your staff report, and you've got that document in front of you, but I'll do a little quick executive summary of what's in that document. So there are 15 single-family, as I said, 15 single-family detached units. That's all that can be in there without coming back to you all to change that PDD document. It's capped at 15 units. The lot standards are as follows. The minimum lot width of 85 foot. This is important because this allows what we call flyby drives with a detached garage in the back or a side-loaded garage. That is important because a garage door on the front elevation tends to break that up and is maybe not as appealing as most. So a minimum lot size of 10,000 square foot. Again, that's the minimum lot size. Most of them are exceeding 15,000 square foot. A minimum front yard setback of 15 foot and a minimum side yard of 7.5 foot. The minimum rear yard setback is 15. So, as I said, this would need to comply in the document. The development will comply with Article 13 of our development ordinance. That's the landscape and tree preservation ordinance. So some things there would be street trees planted 40 foot on center, sidewalks on both sides of the street, that 50-foot residential buffer along Edgebrook that we talked about is required. A tree survey would be conducted to ensure that trees are preserved or specimen trees that aren't preserved are mitigated. In addition to that, there are no front-loading garages, as we talked about, allowed in the development. So with that said, staff is recommending approval as presented or as submitted. Mr. Chairman, I know that the applicant is here as well as other people that may want to speak to this issue.
Okay. All right. Would the applicant like to come forward and speak? If you would, as you approach the podium, just state your name.
Thank you. I'm James Curtis. I own the property here on Edgebrook Drive. We're excited about this development. It's going to be something different from what Anderson's had in quite a long time. Okay, it is a complete custom home development. There will be no mass lot grading, no mass clearing of lots. So we're going to go in, we're going to build the infrastructure of the road, and then each house will be individually, uniquely designed, and then there will be, and the houses will fit to the topography. I would imagine that all, if not most of these, will be built on a crawl space. We do allow for elevated slabs, but these elevated slabs are not built on a pad. This is going to have to match the topography of the existing land. We're not going to just grade, mass grade these. This property has some beautiful trees. We've already done a tree survey, so the location of the road is designed so that we kind of get that street tree effect, like what Chris was talking about. There's some nice specimen trees there. So this upper road there was kind of designed to hug that so that you kind of get that street tree feature there out of the natural. I mean, there's some pretty large oak trees that are on this property. Then we created what we call the pocket park right there in the middle so that you're not just, right across the street from your neighbor. That'll be an HOA feature that will be, nicely landscaped. We have plans. We've been working with a landscape designer, and we plan to have really nice landscaping coming into this neighborhood, as well as in the 50-foot buffer area. Right now, there's there's not great trees in that buffer area, so we'll end up having to plant that all new. Some of the features of the homes, we have the requirement for flyby garages. So not only do we not have front entry garages, the garage structure will not be located on the front of the house, right? All the garage structures will be moved to the rear of the house. And then, so you'll have a driveway that goes down the side of the house, and then you'll come into your garage. And that's really just for aesthetics, for architecture, one, to avoid the front entry garage. But sometimes even when you have the side-loaded garage, you'll end up with where the whole house kind of becomes a garage, if that makes any sense on the front side. So that was one of the things that we wanted to try to do different here. Let's see, let me look at my notes here. The lawn maintenance, so we're gonna have common grass. All the yards will be planted in zoysia grass, and all the common areas will be planted in zoysia grass. All of the mulch beds in all the homes and in the landscape area will be dyed brown mulch, okay? And this is just to maintain the consistency, so that, because all of the lawn maintenance for all 15 home sites and the park and, streetscape area out front will be part of the HOA maintenance. And this will allow us to do, the grass treatments and the things like that. So, I think it's gonna be a really nice neighborhood. I mean, my parents are planning, they currently live in the city, they live in Thornhill right now. They're planning to move into this neighborhood. So I think it's gonna be as nice a neighborhood as we've seen built in Anderson. And we've contemplated the idea of gating it. I think we're gonna allow some of the early residents to help decide if it's a gated community or not. But it's gonna be really nice homes and custom homes. And I'll bring Kate up to speak a little bit about, what the vision of the neighborhood is, and then some of the home designs.
Hey guys, I'm Kate Curtis, and I just wanted to come kind of help you guys see our vision for the neighborhood. I've put together, so this actually is a plan I've been working on with my grandparents. This would be their house for when they, plan to move into this neighborhood, but it helps, just capture and communicate some of our vision for the homes, masonry, hardy board, and I've got a little mission statement here. I think it really captures what we're doing well. Water Oak's an intimate community created for homeowners who want something truly their own. Every residence will be individually designed with its own architecture, floor plan, and character, while thoughtful design standards create a beautiful, cohesive neighborhood that will remain timeless for generations. Yes, I think that really captures well the essence of what we're trying to do here through this neighborhood. And just to further communicate the vision, I've thrown together just some of my designs, again, to help you envision that. Now, every home, every lot will be designed with the client. So it will reflect their personalities, their needs. No elevation will be the same. No floor plan will be the same. So these are just to help you get a feel for what the neighborhood's going to look like, but these aren't necessarily the exact homes that will be in that neighborhood. It's conceptual, but I feel like it helps communicate well what you might be seeing. Let's see. I think, another thing I was going to hit on is, some things to expect is I think we'll see a lot of site finished hardwood floors. We'll see a lot of like all aluminum clad windows, custom cabinetry. We'll see a lot of those features in these type of homes. So it'll be a really charming neighborhood. And I just had one more render of, again, a conceptual design for how it might feel to come in to the neighborhood to help you guys get that vision.
And then we got Wesley White here. Wesley's our civil engineer. He can talk some about that design.
I'm Wesley White with Ridgewater Engineering. We're here in Anderson on McGee Road. Just to bring it back down to the technical side just a little bit, we have had some early conversations with staff, both the utilities and stormwater. The utility side of things, the sewer and water will both be owned and operated by the city of Anderson. So that's another reason that we're pursuing the annexation. The utilities are all going to be there anyway by the city. Additionally, we've spoken with engineering and stormwater department, and obviously they've raised their biggest concern, which is the flooding in that area. And so we've gone over with them some of the preliminary ideas that we have for, and we've written it into the statement of intent, the low impact development side of things, which is the grassed median driveways, as well as the detention, over detaining. You're not required to address the 100-year. We're just allowed to pass it. But we've talked to them about beefing up our stormwater requirements to actually aid in some of that stormwater issues that are having. We can only deal with what's on our property, so we can't address the issues that maybe are there now, but we definitely will not be adding anything to them or adding any impacts to them. So happy to answer any questions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
If there are any questions of staff about, I don't know what, but, and you also have people here that would like to speak, public that would like to speak.
Great. So we'll start taking comments from the groups in the audience. A couple of rules. As you approach the podium, please state your name and address. And we would ask that you keep any comments to 3 minutes or less. We will be timing you. Also, please, if you hear someone else speak to the issue you were planning on speaking to, don't get up and repeat what they've already said. For example, if you're concerned about the traffic on Edgebrook Drive and someone else gets up and already talks about the traffic on Edgebrook Drive, there's really no need for you to get up and talk for 3 more minutes about the traffic on Edgebrook Drive. They've already done that. So please be mindful of the time of everyone in the audience and the time of the members of the board, and let's keep this as efficient as possible, okay? So I welcome anyone who would like to speak to come on up to the podium.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Gwendolyn Mochak, and I live at 119 Old Town Drive in the Old Town Village community. I'm speaking tonight to formally enter our community's urgent safety concerns onto the public record. Our primary objective is not the development itself, but the fact that the existing transit infrastructure is fundamentally incapable of absorbing additional traffic volume. The primary connecting road between our community and the proposed property is already a severe public safety hazard. It is highly winding with limited sight lines, and the asphalt is severely upheavaled in a critical area due to mature pine tree root systems. Adding construction vehicles, heavy equipment, and ultimately hundreds of daily residential trips to a structurally compromised narrow roadway is a recipe for a catastrophic critical accidents. Furthermore, these blind curves and buckled surfaces pose an immediate threat to emergency vehicles, response times for police, fire, and ambulances trying to reach our neighborhood. Before this board grants any zoning changes or site plan approvals, we request a formal, independent traffic impact analysis and a comprehensive infrastructure feasibility study. The developer must be held legally and financially accountable for completing remediation, the root damage, widening the curves, and stabilizing the roadway before a single shovel hits the dirt. We ask the board to defer approval of this project until a concrete, funded infrastructure safety plan is presented to the public. Thank you for your commitment to protecting our community's safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to come forward and speak? Okay. Any questions for the applicant, for staff? Has a traffic study been done at all on this?
No traffic study has been conducted for
Okay,
this.
okay.
And this Edgebrook Drive is a county-maintained road. by the way.
County maintained road, yeah, okay, so. Nothing else? No one? Okay, all right. So, any discussion? Any guys, anybody?
It sounds like the majority of the concern is more so with the traffic and that it imposes rather than the development itself. Correct? I mean, which is a completely valid concern. And I think that, should the right studies be taking place, that's something that, if the county was able to do that, since it is a county-maintained road, correct, Maurice and Chris? I agree that is a valid and warranted concern, but I haven't heard anything concerning with the development itself, per se. I think that in today's day and age, we're seeing a lot of developments that are coming up that are incredibly compact and just small acreage developments and things like that can be concerning to our communities. But it sounds like from what the developers presented, these are very unique, larger scale lots, and I think that being said, that I would make a motion that we approve this, and then if there's any concerning, traffic studies or things like that need to be presented towards the county or for the roads that they maintain, I think that that's a valid concern. But I'd like to make a motion that we approve.
Okay, do we have a second?
annexation.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, all right. Having a motion and a second, let's go ahead and take our vote. All in favor of approving, Can we get the
Annex 26-5.
Okay, ANX 26-5. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, with that, the motion passes. It will go now to
It goes
City
to
Council, I
City
believe?
Council on Monday night.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Do we have any other business for us?
Yes, sir, you have new business,
Oh, okay.
RZ 26-4, it's the Unified Development Ordinance.
Okay, great. And I believe we have someone here to speak on that.
Yes, I'd like to give an introduction real quick before we bring up our presenter. We may want to give a minute for people to clear out of the room, too.
Okay,
So if
great.
that's okay. Ready when you are, Mr. Chairman, so
All right, let's go.
fire away. Okay, very
Fire
good.
away.
Over the last several years, particularly since the adoption of the city's comprehensive plan back in April of 2025, so a little over a year ago, the city has been working with Halcyon Levine Associates to create a new set of regulatory documents that will replace our existing zoning ordinance that you've been familiar with. That's been in place for a number of years now. And Halsey Levine Associates actually assisted us with the adoption of our comprehensive plan as well. And the replacement of the zoning ordinance with new regulatory codes will be our new Unified Development Ordinance. And what that is, and we call it the UDO for short, but what the UDO does, it combines the zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations, and other land use regulations into one streamlined document that works as a tool to help us meet the goals of that comprehensive plan that we adopted last year. And along the way, over the past year or so, we've kept y'all in the loop, providing you some draft information. We had a couple of work sessions as we go through this process, because it is a very tedious process with a lot of regulations. So we went through that with y'all and the city council. But some of you were on the planning commission back in 2023, but 3 years ago, roughly, the city council saw the need to adopt some guidelines that really focused on community appearance. And they wanted to go ahead and adopt some guidelines ahead of revising this zoning code, just so they could get things working, particularly the sign code and our landscaping and tree preservation regulations. So that went before the planning commission and went to city council for adoption about 3 years ago. So that's been going on for some time now. And those were intended to be part of the document, but again, the council wanted to fast forward the adoption of that. So those are in place. So essentially, there's a couple of chapters of this Unified Development Ordinance that are already working for the city right now. Now, regarding the adoption process for the UDO, we did conduct a public open house on June 4th to collect community feedback, and also this Unified Development Ordinance has been made available on our website over the past several weeks, and you're able to make comments on that as well on the website. So prior to official consideration and approval by the City Council, the Planning Commission must conduct a public hearing to collect community input. That's the reason why we're here tonight. This is the official public hearing. And tonight, we would like to kick things off with a presentation giving an overview of what the Unified Development Ordinance is. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to introduce Nicole Campbell with Halsey Levine. She'll be the one that will provide us that overview. And then once Ms. Campbell is complete with her presentation, you can open it up for comment prior to making your recommendation tonight. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have for the staff. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Nicole.
Great, thank you. So I'm Nicole Campbell. I'm a project manager with Halsey Levine. It is really exciting when we get to work with the community through the comprehensive plan into the UDO and see everything come together. So I'll be providing the overview, a zoning code. I think you guys might have it printed. It is a big document, so this will be an overview of major changes. If there are specific questions, we can get into some of the technicalities. Okay. So this is just our agenda for the evening. We'll talk about the overall project, the process that brings us here tonight, some of the purpose and goals that we're trying to achieve through this project, and then the major changes of the UDO itself. So this shows a timeline of the project. We started with those expedited amendments for signs, landscaping, and tree preservation back in 2023, and then we moved into the full rewrite of the UDO. The lightning bolt identifies the adoption process, which is where we are at now, doing the public hearing this week, and then the hopefully adoption next week. We touched on this already, a unified development ordinance. A lot of communities are transitioning to having one document where the zoning and subdivision regulations are. A couple of years ago, it was bringing sign regulations into zoning ordinances, and now we're combining all three elements into a unified development ordinance. An important piece of this element is that we're implementing the goals of the newly adopted comprehensive plan. So a comprehensive plan is an aspirational document where the community identifies their major goals to see the city progress. The zoning regulations are technical, detailed rules that development has to follow. So it's really what we refer to it as like the teeth of the comprehensive plan, but the intent is really to implement the goals from that plan. These are some of the goals that the UDO focuses on: diverse housing types, supporting mixed use and commercial activity, bringing in third places, updating screening and buffers to protect residential areas, improving walkability, bikeability, and then looking at the process that development goes through. So now moving into the UDO itself, this shows the structures of the 11 chapters. So like we mentioned, it is a big document, but a UDO can really be defined as 3 main sections. The first is districts and uses, chapters 2 and 3, which is what is my property zoned and what can I do there. That shows where the building can go, what uses can be on that property, and what parameters they have to comply with. The second section is what we call standards of general applicability. So that's going to be chapters 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. These really talk about the look and feel of development, where parking is, looking at lighting, screening, landscaping. Then finally we have review and decision making, which is how the project moves through the review process. So we're going to go through each of these chapters and talk about the major changes. We won't talk too much about the sign standards and tree preservation, just because a lot of those major updates were done as the expedited amendments back in 2023. Some changes have been made, but they're really just minor tweaks since those regulations have been applied, and how any tweaks that needed to be made to make sure that we're getting the development that we want. We're jumping into chapter 2 because chapter 1 is a lot of the legalese that has to be included to establish this document as regulations. So looking at chapter 2, we have district standards. This chapter establishes base districts and overlay districts. It talks about setbacks, height requirements, any exceptions to those standards, so major updates here are to the district framework, so what those districts are. We also established a historic overlay district with specific standards for those, and then established a new plan development process. This matrix shows the updated district framework. The intent to the changes here are really to bring it into alignment with the land use plan. So the comprehensive plan shows where different land uses should be, what those categories are, what the goals are for those different categories. Then we look at the zoning districts, where they fit, if there are redundancies or opportunities for new districts. And then we have those new proposed zoning districts. The intent here is not to establish any new character in the city, but really just to protect or enforce the desired character. So major changes here, we've transitioned from lot-sized naming conventions. So like the residential districts were previously like R40 to identify a 40,000 square foot lot. We switched to character-based names. We've established a mixed residential district to accommodate a variety of housing types. We've modernized and brought the neighborhood commercial district into alignment with the goals for that district, which we'll talk about a little bit. We reclassified the planned development district to be a legacy district, so that allows it to remain as is, the parcels that are already zoned that, but then establish that new overlay. And then we removed the environmental overlay district. This looks at bulk and dimensional standards for multifamily residential. Major updates here, we updated lot area and width to reflect current development patterns. We took a look at any inconsistencies with setbacks or opportunities to modernize those, and then adjusted density for different housing types as opposed to a one-size-fits-all. For the neighborhood commercial district, so this is the pink area that's shown on this proposed zoning map. The comprehensive plan talks about this district as a compact, walkable environment, kind of as a transition from the central business district, you know, the heart of downtown, moving into those more intense commercial areas. So the changes here are really just to enforce that character. Then there are how to calculate the bulk and dimensional standards, any adjustments or exceptions. Here, it's not a major update, but it's just something to note that the building height measurement was updated to something more modern, which is from the grade to the highest point. We've established height transition standards. This is to protect existing smaller buildings with any new adjacent taller buildings. And then we added administrative adjustments for additional height exceptions. For the historic overlay district, this is new. There was previously the historic guidelines. So guidelines are a little bit more subjective and talk about the character as opposed to enforceable standards. So we've codified some of those guidelines. There's a list there that shows the standards that are addressed. And then we tied the design standards to the guideline document. For the plan development overlay, the existing process is to have a plan development district. Concerns with having a plan development district is that you're starting from scratch and essentially allowing a developer to create their own standards for a district. When you have an overlay, you can use your base zoning, which has already been established as the appropriate zoning for that area, and then you put the plan development overlay on top to allow flexibility from those base zoning standards. So it makes it a little bit more compatible with the surrounding development, the standards that are already in place. And then we've established objectives. So it's essentially a trade-off of you're getting this flexibility, but you have to provide something that's beneficial to the community. And those objectives are pulled from the comprehensive plan, which might include like elements for placemaking, creating additional compatibility with adjacent land uses, or potentially having to provide more amenities or more residential park space. Chapter 3, we have use standards. This chapter covers principal, accessory, and temporary uses. Major updates here are modernization to the use tables themselves, removing the conditional use permits, but then supporting allowed uses with refined supplemental use standards, and then just a refinement of accessory and temporary uses. Okay. So previously, the way that uses are allowed were permitted by right, permitted with conditional uses, or not permitted, so a prohibited use. As part of this UDO, we're proposing to remove conditional use permits, and so uses will either be allowed or not allowed, but we've strengthened supplemental standards. So those are saying this use is allowed under these parameters. We'll show a couple of examples of supplemental use standards. For the actual allowed uses, we've expanded neighborhood residential uses. So these are small scale residential types. The yellow boxes identify changes that have been made to just allowing some more housing types in neighborhood commercial, making that mixed residential truly have a diverse amount of housing types. For multi-unit dwellings, these are more like typical apartment buildings. We've broken out the multi-unit use category into different unit types, and if it's a building complex, how many buildings there are. This allows us to have some control over the intensity while still introducing some of those smaller scale apartments in appropriate areas. For commercial uses, we've modernized the uses. Sometimes communities will have a hyper-specific use, like the example we always use is like haberdashery, and maybe that's an outdated term, so we choose to include more general uses, just so that the use table is able to adapt to changing trends in the market. So that's what some of those broader categories are. We've added some square footage amounts. So there may be like a retail above or below 15,000 square feet. Again, allowing more uses to be included, but controlling the intensity of them. So then supplemental use standards, these address things like minimum lot sizes, proximity to residential uses or zones, allowed operations, and screening of operations. Some of these existed in the code already, and we've refined those that are still aligned with modern use standards. The examples on the screen show a drive-through and a car wash. So these show like the location of the actual drive-through lane where that would be allowed, the amount of stacking that should be required. If there are areas where commercial is allowed next to residential, creating more of a separation just to protect those residential areas. Okay. Chapter 4 is general development. This addresses things like amenities. We have some fence and wall standards, screening, vision triangle. Those three didn't have a lot of updates. It's just bringing over a lot of the existing, making minor tweaks. For major updates, we've established building design standards. We replaced a lot of subjective language with objective standards, and then established standards for activated open spaces. For building design, there are standards for building materials, windows, building entryways, facade articulation, roof design. These are for multi-unit, mixed-use, and non-residential buildings. The way that we've included standards is we don't like to write ordinances that are overly prescriptive. We like to create a base level of quality and then options to meet those standards. This ensures that there is, higher quality buildings in Anderson, but creates flexibility within those standards. Similar standards for townhouses, different. These building design standards here are really just to ensure that townhomes look like townhomes. There are also standards for neighborhood residential uses. Those are those like small scale residential. Then we have social gathering spaces. These are intended to, one, create open spaces, but then to activate them with amenities, so they're not just large areas of grass that go unused. They are actually including improvement types. These apply to subdivisions, larger developments, and then commercial and institutional developments that are over 5 acres. We use a point system for social gathering spaces, so there will be an amount of points that are allocated depending on the development type and size. And then we have a menu to achieve those points with different amenity types, and then the point allocated to each of those. So again, just creating that flexibility, but making sure that these spaces are activated. Then we have outdoor lighting standards. These address specific lighting types, introducing some dark sky principles, and ensuring that the lighting for different types is appropriate. There's also minimum and maximum illumination standards. This makes sure that there's no spillover, and that any neighboring properties are protected by the lighting that's on the adjacent property. Then we have parking and access. Major updates here, we required a traffic impact analysis with certain thresholds for which those developments would apply. Modernized parking requirements, the approach to parking, and then different design standards for those parking areas. establishing standards for both short-term and long-term bike parking. And then we also established standards for public sidewalks, trail connections, and on-site walkways. There were minor updates to provisions for driveways and loading zones, but not too many changes from what's existing. Okay. Looking at the traffic impact analysis, there's different thresholds for when a project would have to provide a TIA. This evaluates level of service, which is a little different from like vehicle miles traveled, but it's the most universal. And then we've included provisions that say that the TIA has to be reviewed by the city engineer. Then looking at vehicle parking, the approach here is that the existing regulations have minimum parking requirements, so we took a look at those and right-sized them. Then we established a maximum parking limit. So there's a parking minimum, and then if a developer chose to provide more parking, it could not exceed 50% of the minimum requirement. The intent there is just to have less over parking and have those areas be something more useful for the community. We've also included some staff-approved adjustments. Those have clear criteria and then the amount that the waiver can be. In the central business district in downtown, we've exempted non-residential uses from having a minimum parking requirement. This is common for downtown areas, again, just to reduce the amount of parking, improve walkability, but still requiring it for residential uses. There's a 20% rule that exists in the code that was carried over to protect multi-use developments. And then we've also added a requirement for electrical vehicle charging spaces for larger parking lots. For parking lot design, we've included provisions for parking lot location. So the location of a parking lot can impact the character of an area. If it's to the rear or the side of a building, it's intended to be a more walkable area versus if it's in the front, that's more common along like commercial corridors. We've updated stall and aisle dimensions, allowed surfacing materials, internal access drives, which are shown on this kind of bottom middle diagram. These are for like larger parking lots to make sure that vehicles are able to maneuver safely from off-site to on-site. We've updated standards for connectivity between lots, just to make sure that parking lots that are adjacent to each other on different lots do have connectivity, and you don't have to like drive all the way off-site just to get to the parcel next door. And then we've added standards for modern parking types like compact cars, rideshare, and pickups. For bike parking, we've added short-term and long-term requirements. And then we added design standards to ensure that the bike parking that is provided is convenient. If it's convenient, close to the buildings and well designed, it's more likely to be used. Then we have trails, on-site walkways, and public sidewalks. For trails, the Parks and Recreation Connection Plan shows the connection between trails within the community. If there's a parcel that's adjacent to an existing or planned trail, it would have to require a connection. On-site walkways, that's shown in this diagram here, really just to make sure that people are able to access the parking areas, the buildings, and sidewalks safely. And then public sidewalks would be required along frontages for new development. Chapter 6 and 7, this is where we had those expedited amendments. I'm going to skip over these two chapters. Going into Chapter 8, which is the subdivision standards. We've established two types of subdivisions, major and minor. Minor subdivisions are 4 or fewer lots, and then major is 5 or more. We've also added standards for alternate subdivision designs. So there's conservation, which is on the top right. Hopefully that's the top right for you guys. That allows smaller lots in an effort to conserve natural resources. Then we have motor court, which is the example shown on the bottom. It's just de-emphasizing garages and allowing them to share entrances or a driveway to those parking garages. And then we have the green court, which is shown on the top left, where there are smaller dwellings around a common green space. Still for subdivisions, we've established anti-monotony standards. These prevent subdivisions from being like cookie cut style, so where every other one is the same. Then we've required residential park space. We've updated roadway design standards. And then connectivity standards, both for internal and external, to make sure that people can get around their neighborhood, but also to other neighborhoods or to commercial areas. Then we have review and decision making. We took a look at the different reviewing bodies. We put it in a matrix to see which reviewing body is reviewing which application type. This makes it clear both for staff administering the code, but also for people who are looking at the document and aren't sure which process their application would have to go through. We've also included flowcharts like the ones shown here, which show the process that an application would have to go through from submittal to approval. Then we have nonconformities. This is typical for nonconforming chapters. It talks about different uses that are existing before this code was adopted, so that makes them like legal nonconforming. We did add an amortization for junkyards, so that standard says that after a certain amount of time, all junkyards cannot exist and need to be improved with something else. So I know that was a lot. The code is a lot, and it's very technical. I usually make a joke about how zoning isn't very exciting, but we did already clear the room, so I think that's enough said about the excitement for zoning. But the intent here is really to have a document that's, beneficial for all users, reviewing bodies so that they can read it clearly, people who are submitting applications so that they know what's expected of them and what is expected of the review process, and then also easy for staff to actually administer. So next steps is just that we're going to council next week if we move forward from this meeting.
Great job, thank you. So Maurice, where do we go from here?
Open it up for public comment.
Okay, all right. So anyone who would like to comment on the Unified Development Ordinance, feel free to do so. We'd ask the same thing as before. If you would like to comment, come forward to the podium, state your name and address, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. No, no one here to talk? Okay. All right, so I guess anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion we approve.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Great, awesome. Okay, so, let's see.
That will be forwarded to the city council also for consideration at their August 10th meeting.
August 10th, that's what I was going to ask. So it's going to city council, also that the annexation will go there as well, same meeting, I assume. Okay, so if anyone has anything they want to address, then they can attend that meeting, so. All right, any more business to address tonight?
There's no new business. But we'd move on to election of officers.
That's right. Okay, so now we get to do the fun stuff. We get to elect officers. All right. So, as everyone knows, our current chairman decided to go and join city council, I believe, didn't he, on us? And so we are in need of new officers. So I open the floor to nominations. So I respectfully decline that nomination. Thank you. I'm happy to continue to serve on the commission, but I think it's time for some new blood.
Can we nominate Bryce?
I think that's a great idea. Bryce, would you accept the nomination to be chair?
I will gladly accept the nomination to be chair. No.
All right, okay. And vice chair? Any nominations?
Casey?
Anyone want to volunteer to be vice chair?
I'll nominate Kari.
Okay, all right, great. And then we need, I believe that we have our standing secretary. I'd like to renominate her to continue on in that position. Appoint her to do that. And guess next step is to vote on those nominations. So I'll just group them all together in one big group. Anyone have any objection to that? I'll make a motion, we approve the docket as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, great.
That's for a one-year term.
For a one-year term,
Expiring
that's
June
correct.
30,
Yep.
2027.
Yeah, you guys are in for a year. So, great job, I've enjoyed it very much. Okay, so, now, so what's next?
There's no staff report at this time. And then after that, it's on to, I'm sorry, it's board business and then staff
You have to
report.
forgive me, I'm a
My
slave to the
apologies, it's
agendas.
staff report and then, it's board business and then staff report. So board business.
Any, I guess the board business was the election officer, so any other board business? Anything else?
Think we're
Anyone
good?
have anything? No? No other business?
Staff?
No
Staff,
staff,
anything?
no staff report.
Okay, all right, well, I guess we can adjourn then. Thank you.